Okay. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Catalyst Energies. My name is Dee. Thank you for joining me. I am so grateful that you are here. I really had to make sure that the microphone was actually on this time because on Friday, the first 10 minutes of audio were non-existent as far as everyone out there was concerned. So, gosh, those details really matter. And if that isn't a Virgo lesson in itself, I'm not sure what is. And this actually, surprisingly and beautifully enough, is one way to think about how we're approaching this time period right now is in that true Virgo fashion of being meticulous, detail oriented, right? Leave no stone unturned, right? No piece is irrelevant in the full puzzle, right? Just like if you put together a jigsaw puzzle, there's never going to be a piece that's not part of the overall picture in which it all comes together. So those little things, right? Did you check and make sure all of your settings were where they needed to be? Did you pay attention to what you were doing before you burned the shit out of your mouth, right? That was a story that I shared with the Reiki healing attunement participants in over the weekend in terms of that process, right? So we're doing these everyday attunements. I'm offering a Reiki healing attunement, which is a very short process of attuning and kind of creating, reinforcing a template energetically of healing for the person receiving it. And we are committing to doing this every day for the next 21 days. I'll show you some material on that in a little bit. I really want to just get into the flow of what we're going to be, what we're already fully enveloped by at this point in terms of our own process, what's going on out in the world. Mercury is about to station retrograde any day now. On Friday, actually, is going to make its transition into its retrograde, right? Which is a optical illusion based on relativity of time and space and speed, because it looks like Mercury is moving backwards in its orbit, and it's really not moving backwards at all. It's just our perception of that. And so I personally love Mercury retrograde times because I have a natal Mercury in retrograde. And I don't find it a challenge as much as other people. And you may find that's the case for yourself. You have a natal retrograde Mercury in your chart, and you're like, it doesn't really bother me. Like, this is just a good time to go back and proofread and edit. If you're an editor or you like kind of, getting into the weeds in terms of ideas and really rooting around in there, Mercury retrograde is a great time for that. So, and it's stationing at 9 degrees Libra, which from a Sabian symbol standpoint is this picture of 3 old masters, lined up like in a art gallery, some sort of cultural reference to what has come before us, and providing a visual representation, a trifold representation of an image of something that we can apply to our own equilibrium in the face of some sort of chaotic upheaval. Right? And even in the nature of Libra itself, where you are constantly working with the flow and the motion and the balance of materiality to find equilibrium or fairness or justice, whatever it is that Libra represents to you. Very much the 7th house, the form of relationship is, as long as you are kind of accepting that that's part of it, there is a sense of rhythm that is established with Libra. And we're going to go into that September into October, right? That's the time of the harvest. That is the time of Libra season, especially once we hit our equinox. So Mercury stationing retrograde in Libra, moving back to 0 degrees Libra at the day that the sun conjuncts with the equinox, the September equinox. So now is the time for that inner review, I would say, or start to at least be able to recognize that Mercury is now slowing down. It is slowing down to a stop, and then, much like the pendulum, right, is going to swing the other way. And if we can really embrace this opportunity to do the internal mental review, or at least turn those types of energies, which is very difficult right now with Mars and Gemini, right? That is a territory that the planet planet Mercury rules, and now also strong Virgo. Venus is in Virgo now. The sun obviously is still in Virgo right now on our 9/6/2022, right? I mean, we got this 966 here in this date, and which is actually, strangely enough, very relevant to my personal life and very relevant to what I feel like is happening on this Reiki healing attunement journey for me personally. So that's something I'll share with that group in that container. But we do have this kind of opportunity right now with this date. And I think that taking stock of an opportunity to kind of turn inward, because in terms of our mental energy, even though the patience and the discernment, it's not like we stop entirely with responding to our everyday life or even our action within it. It's more about using our intuition, and Mercury retrograde is a great way to cultivate that, even in an air sign like Libra. So there's plenty to talk about today. We're going to look at some space weather. Boy, oh boy, there was a lot of geomagnetic disturbance, higher than and more consistent than it's been in a while. So you may have had any manner of relationship with that, symptoms. And for those who are part of the healing attunement event, this is, in some ways, the healing attunement, the grid that we are creating together and within ourselves by our intention to do this, is certainly strengthening and really kind of crystallizing some sort of scaffolding to maintain ourselves as the planet's magnetic field is undergoing its own, disruption and moving around and being unsteady. And there's this huge, we are just getting blasted with solar wind, like really strongly. And it's interesting to, just pay attention and observe the correlation between ourselves, our experiences, and what's happening out there. So, and there was this just marvelous, oh my God, it was huge. There was this very large flare that went off the other side of the sun, again, moving towards Venus, who apparently has no internally generated magnetic field. According to the current scientific, academy when it comes to planetary sciences and astrophysics. I'm curious to go more into that, but basically that there is no internal magnetic field that is going to be impacted by it, but there is an atmosphere around Venus that will be impacted by the incredible CME that's heading towards it. And so it's not heading towards us. Thankfully, that would have been a real problem, I think. But Venus is now in Virgo. And all of those things that we're really passionate about, and we had all of this fire within ourselves, right? And really embodying all of the values, embodying the things that are worthy about ourselves, our own voice, all of those things. Now it's time to put it into form. And that is what Virgo is all about, is not only being able to understand the specific pieces of this form and what needs to happen, but the big picture at the same time. And this is the blending of duality and the analysis and the real strong organization that Virgo represents. So one of the things I said I believe it was one of the new moon, I don't remember which one. I remember saying, find the nearest Virgo to you, because they're going to know, they're just going to be in that state because the sun is in their sign right now. And all the details matter, right? Down to all of the things that you're feeling, shifting and changing within you, all of those kind of moments of synchronicity, all of those moments of oh, I made that connection, all of those, anything, right, that is connected to what you're doing. I feel like it's all about putting the pieces together. So for the Reiki attunement, this is a good time actually to be able to just share that with you. So just in case, because it is open enrollment, and we have about 19 or 20 participants right now, which is pretty remarkable. And the open enrollment is, based on the fact that Reiki operates outside of time and space. And so even if you join now and are consistent until the 21st, it's, you're still going to get the full impact of everything that has been built so far with the people who have been participating. So I'll just share with you real quick the flyer for this. So Here we go. We've already started September 1st, 3 weeks, right? 21 days to really implement or install some sort of new healthy habit or set of practices or discipline, right? And so the healing attunement that I'm offering is allowing for that template to be reinforced every day, right? And there's a grid that I've made, and there's a reading that goes along, and it's all exclusive to the people participating. So it's not too late, of course, to get in on it, and it's a sliding scale. Because the attunement itself is really doesn't take, long, or it's not a huge investment of time per se, but the impact that it's having all of us, including myself as being part of it, does have, there's a lot of output in terms of the transmission that comes through the energy, through the reading as well. And so that covers a lot of the time in order to, transmit the abstraction. So this is available at catalystenergies.net. You can link to that in the description box below if you're interested in participating and getting more information. So, my friends, let's take a look real quick here at well, we will look at our chart, of course. I'm going to share with you the Schumann resonance for today, and there's a couple things that I want to just kind of look at and bring our attention to. Also, I'm going to check in with the stream here and see. Barbara says, nothing like the smell of sage on a Starseed ministry, Maureen. You are absolutely right, and so grateful to be here. Hello, everyone. Thank you, Barb, for being here. Man, I appreciate your presence so much, and I'm grateful, too. I am seriously very grateful. In fact, I'm going to burn some more sage here in the booth. Before we get into the meat of things. So we'll just go over this space weather, because this is how we learn, right? We just have a consistency with it. Again, more Virgo lessons for us to wrap our heads around. This is how we learn. And this is how I learn, right? I'm learning just by sharing. So the thing that I think is really interesting here, there's a couple things, is that over the weekend there was, like I said, I'm going to show you the chart too, where there's a lot of geomagnetic disturbance, right? The KP index got very high, and clearly the sun is a lot more active. So there's these really strong but also very short-lived kind of bursts, right, into the 50 plus range, and then it kind of tapers off Saturday. Sunday there was some movement, of course, and going up to about 30. And what is interesting about this is that you'll see here that there's some really strong changes in the quality of the Schumann. So I often will explain this in a way, if you think about it as a sound wave or sound vibration, if you're a musician or anything like that, you'll know that the amplification is the volume, right? How big the wavelength is. The quality is the, quality of the tone, right? It's not wavering. It's not, whatever impacts the quality of a strong tone. And for whatever you play or you sing or whatever, you know what this means and what you need to do. And then you have the actual frequency itself down here, which is the pitch, the actual pitch. So you see that there was, from Saturday into Sunday, a really significant climb in the frequency of the Schumann itself. I mean, it went up. I mean, you're talking 8.8. It is a whole step from where the Schumann usually is like 7.8 roughly, right, hertz. It went up to 8.8. That's pretty significant, and it climbed all through Saturday into Sunday. And then there was an amplification that happened, and then it dropped down pretty consistently. You can see it across all four of these graphs here. And then there was an amplification. This is on Sunday, yesterday. And then there was a really strong change to the quality, where you had a large increase here and you had a large increase in the red as well. And it probably would be helpful to understand all of the different layers of it, but what I do see are the patterns. And the Schumann is back down to its normal and even lower kind of frequency. This looks like it's almost 7.2, which is kind of lower than it usually is, right? And this is normal, the variation. and it starts to climb back up again. And then you see another large amplification. You see this strange spike in the quality in the yellow and green this time, which is different than what we saw over on Sunday, which is the white and the red had a strong amplification, or a strong surge in its quality. These different pieces, again, strong surge in the quality, but there's a very marked drop in the frequency, really strong, and is still down here at this point, back down to what has normally been the baseline. So I don't know what that means, but it does feel here it was storming, right? There were a lot of big earthquakes over the weekend, really big ones. There was a big one in China that was like almost a 7-pointer. And here is Saturday into Sunday. I mean, look how consistently the geomagnetic unrest has been. And it's now finally starting to taper. So if you're committed to a process of like, I am installing this healing template and working towards it in, the Virgo fashion, that's really being supported right now. I think this has been, there has been disruptions in our inner circuitry, just like the planet's field has had disruptions in its own inner circuitry. And the way that I described it over the weekend is like the auroras that we get when things like this happen, is really just shining a light on what's already there. We just don't really see it. We can only feel it or be aware of it in different ways. And then we get these charged particles from these solar winds and these beautiful northern lights, or the auroras. And it's really just the charged particles are making an impact with the atmosphere, but it's not something that doesn't already exist. It's just changing the frequency and changing the charge in the atmosphere based on the interaction. So maybe what we have found over the weekend, and I could say probably for the case with the people participating in the Reiki attunement, I feel like I can speak for many of us, at least those who are commenting, is that there has been kind of this reveal of something that's always been there, and it's just that much more like, whoa. And that's part of the healing journey. The only way out is through. And we're talking about many, many, many levels, lifetimes. I mean, Neptune is in Pisces. Is it not in retrograde? Just the purging of everything, and details matter, because Virgo is opposite of Pisces. In order to cathartically purify the self, in order to allow the purity of source consciousness to inhabit. I mean, every piece has to be put together, right? The Rubik's Cube has to be all lined up. Otherwise, there's corruption in the program somewhere. So we're living this process right now, and whatever's going on with the sun is in a lot of ways enhancing it and aggravating it. So it is starting to calm down, thankfully. It's been pretty remarkable. So here is this huge flare. Now it's billowing out away from us, if you can imagine that. And it is because we are seeing this from the solar observatory perspective that is closer to us than it is the sun, right? And so we know that it's going to be heading out to Venus, which is in Virgo right now, just moving into Virgo over the weekend. And this is not the first time that the sun has blasted at Virgo with this powerful flare that is CME producing, that is going to have an impact somehow, right? We can't be looking at astrology and utilizing it and not think that there is going to be an energetic impact to this in some way, right? And Virgo is in our physical fields. It is the value and worth and harmony within, beauty and magnetics, right? And solar magnetics and magnetics of the planets themselves. And I think whatever this is, I feel like there is this roundabout way in some ways that the sun is just blowing off towards Venus, who apparently doesn't have an internally generated magnetic field, but there is still an interplanetary magnetic, network that is still going to, in some ways, kind of loop this around. Like, there is a turning of a corner, and this is exactly what happened in 2012, right? That the sun flared really strongly, like a Carrington event strongly, but away from us. And so it's in the fields, right? It's in the magnetic fields. It's in our internalized sense of energy, right? And people have all kinds of experiences of this, that we really need to put the pieces together. And part of that is the very uncomfortable process usually of identifying what, root causes of things are, or even identifying if there are root causes that haven't been addressed, because there's still ways to heal, or there's still ways to strengthen what is there, but we have to at least acknowledge it first before we can get anywhere. So anyway, I'll stop hypnotizing you with this with this image, because I'm hypnotized by it right now. I'm going to share next the reading that we have for today. And this is in lieu of, for those in the Reiki attunement circle here, this is your reading as well. And so after I did the attunement, this is when I pulled the cards for the ministry. So there's kind of this, like, in some ways, day 6, how perfect that there is this bit of reaching out now from what we've all kind of crystallized together in our intention for our own individual soul healing. And now we get to kind of apply that, or, allow that to have a relationship outside of us, just enough to like bring this reading in and to see like, oh, how is this impacting things around me perhaps? So we see in our reading for today, we have Mars in Pisces, right? The 10 of Cups, and it's come out in this like horizontal fashion, which I have a very specific read about. We have the Hierophant, right? Our Taurus card in the center here, the High Priest. We have 8 and 8 on either side here. The 8 of Forces, which is the lightning bolt. The 8 of Scrolls, which is paths unknown. We actually have another 8, which is the Archangel Raphael, also reversed. So all of these 8s are also reversed right now. And there's so much numerology related to the 8th. In Gnosticism, this is the number of the Christ consciousness. You just turn an 8 on its side and you have the infinity symbol. Boy, if you want to really get into it, Steiner's work on the 8th sphere, and currently Dark Journalist is covering so much of this. His most recent, actually, broadcast was about this. And if you really want to get into the weeds about the 8th sphere and Saturn and the Black Cube and the Mystery School connection to it, boy, I would really recommend that. So, and that's coming, that's something that I really, really have strongly connected to lately, is Steiner's work. So there's something really strong here, especially in a consistent retrograde in this inversion in this reading. And that doesn't necessarily mean that aspect that we normally consider, that transition into our infinite self, right? Realizing that the spirit is infinite, and it's our soul that connects us to that, not our body necessarily. But there is this interwoven way that it all comes together, which I think we're all starting to really figure out now. We'll go into the specifics about all of these cards in a minute, but what we see is an outcome or effect here of where we're at, which is really the Queen of Swords coming from Virgo into Libra. And I suspect we're going to see this a lot when Venus is making that transition from the last 10 degrees of Virgo into Libra, which is going to be, much later in the fall. But the sun will make this transition, I would say, very, very soon from these last 10 degrees of Virgo into Libra. Now, the Queen of Swords is the mother of the air element. So I'm not getting a lot of sun vibe as much as much more of a Venus and possibly the moon vibe as well. But the idea here with these court cards always is that this represents some aspect of either ourselves, somebody that we identify in our life, either publicly in our personal life, and or in some ways like a guide, some type of representation of this. But the Queen of Swords, man, she just chops the head right off. There's a tendency to be kind of idealistic, but in this case with the Hierophant and the High Priest as the center here, this is where I really get this sense of really finding that fulfillment because of our own belief that we've cultivated. And belief is not the same as, belief is based on faith, and faith is based on what you go through in the 8th house, which is the Scorpio house, right? And so it's not blind. Perhaps it is in different parts of the astrological chart. Maybe that 2nd to 3rd house could be blind adherence without knowing better. But faith is based on what you have experienced, and belief is a very 9th house Sagittarius element. And so we just had our moon in Sag quarter square the sun over the weekend, and that's, the Hierophant is often connected to the sun in Sagittarius. So I think there's still a lot of trepidation about where we're going. I think that there is a sense, deep down that the storm is like in progress or in some cases is already passing. And there may feel like a loss of power, but at the same time, it's about really being that observer and that witness. So let's start getting into the specifics before I get too far into the reading. I also want to... And I have a very specific read about this in terms of the space weather, actually. So I'm going to check in with the chat. Megan is saying, feeling the feels for sure. More easily moved to tears, especially happy tears, but the emotions are close to the surface and lots of yawning, even when I normally wouldn't. Transmuting all day, every day. Oh, and Sarah P. is joining us. Hello, ladies. Finished watering the garden and ate breakfast. Well done. That's a great way to start the day. The feels are definitely on the surface, and all of them, right? The physical feels, the emotional feels. Saturday, man, I napped so long on Saturday, right? And that's when that geomagnetic disturbance seemed to be really strong consistently all day long. It was about Saturday on the 4th, right? When that coronal hole, stream was just like, it was just an endless stream of charged plasma particles. And I was like, I'm going to lay down now, right? And it stormed a lot that day. The weather changed really suddenly. And it rained a lot, stormed quite a bit, but I definitely was down for the count, just napped for 3 solid hours and still sleeping like a full 8 or 9 hours every night. So I really read this card, actually, now that you've brought that up too. I see this card as kind of like being headlong, facing a headwind of energy, emotional energy and magnetic energy. And in some ways, this plasma stream from the solar wind, really, that's what I feel in this card more. And not so much washing over us, but the fact that it's horizontal is what gets me. It feels like there is this, having to just kind of face the headwind. And I will say that the north node of the moon currently, like the true node, like the oscillating node, not the average or mean node, because some people do track it that way, but the true node in the north node is about to enter a degree of Taurus, which is truly about putting that hat on, popping your collar, and just facing the storm. And so this, and 10 of Cups, right? This is a sense of Mars about to, it's overflowing. It's ready to be brought into its next creative potential. And not so much that we have to push through, but we have to find a place where we are, our own bubble of toroidal field in the face of this. And I do think it's interesting that this is the tree of life. It's the Kabbalah. And for all of the negative, inverted ways that Western mysticism has been misused by I would say the left-hand path of the mystery schools. There is something to this, which is that you're either going to just be like completely washed away by this, right, with Neptune in Pisces, and this is Mars in Pisces, the Ten of Cups. There's nothing wrong with being satiated. And just like Megan said, wow, this is perfect in some ways, right? That the flow is very strong and moved to tears for joy. Some people are moved to tears for pain. Some people are moved to tears out of just anguish. Some people are moved to tears out of happiness, right? And just contentment. And maybe that is the best way to utilize this Mars energy. Now, Mars is conjunct Aldebaran right now, right? And there's a sense of taking a nosedive and really just irrevocably committing to something, right? You know, you're either going to succeed or you're not. And Mars is that energy that kind of makes that decision. So I get this vibe here, right? That we're just kind of like, you know, bring it on. Like, I am ready to receive everything that is in alignment and in resonance with this field I'm creating, but also, you know, the rest can just wash over me, and I still have a direction I'm heading. And, you know, anybody that's does anything like bike riding or, you know, on a boat or anything like that, or flying, right? A headwind. It just takes more energy, but at least it's Mars, right? So now what I think is very interesting here, I love the Hierophant. I love this card. It's just personal. You know, it's just personal preference about this card. So Sun in Sag, Jupiter in Pisces, right? But also it's really Taurus. And you can even see that the bull is kind of draped around this figure behind him. And all these masks of different animals or personas surrounding the high priest, right? Like, and you see the kind of the divine feminine behind, like in the shadows, and one little light that's like right here, kind of at that sacral chakra area that's like lighting up. And so it's the high priest that is able to really, it represents the structure of truth in a lot of ways. Now, now it does represent the world of belief and confession, right? And so there's this sense of an actual like doctrine or dogma or tradition that the high priest is stepping into a role to fulfill, right? To provide, to put on that mask, you know, to be that, to fill that role. But this is more for us, I think. It's about the search for knowledge and illumination, right? And we do especially experience, I think, which is why this transmission is titled the way it is that there is a deep fulfillment when we trust our own beliefs, right? And that's, again, not about willful, like blind trust or blind faith. This is about experiencing what it means to trust and take that risk and succeed and have the return on that investment, and what it has felt like when when you've trusted and there's been betrayal, right? And you learn from that situation as well. So there's a fulfillment when you come to that realization. And so there's wisdom and there's knowledge as an experience that's independent from any kind of like dogmatic presentation. It's much more of a natural presence here with this Hierophant. And this is the center, right? This is the heart of the matter. And again, we're talking about Taurus, right? Uranus is retrograde. The North Node is in Taurus right now. It's about to come into that degree of the first half of Taurus, right? Which is, substantiation, basically, and facing the storm, right? Character being brought out under adversity. But there's a sense of like implicit trust in the value of and divinity of the world around us, the sacredness of the world around us. And the Hierophant too also has this really strong Buddhist quality, at least for me. Mostly because it's birthday. Sorry. Here the cats are just like going nuts. And so there are weird sounds that are happening outside of this booth. And I'm just like, what was that? Right? Because I am kind of like, back here and not sure what's happening outside of myself, which is kind of the whole point. Man, that's an interesting Buddhist thing too, right? In terms of meditation is being able to establish what is in this field of experience and be able to very energetically and physically create that boundary that can't be really penetrated unless you allow it. So I don't know, good practice here. So this is at the heart of the matter, and in terms of our own search for wisdom. Now, at the base here, our axis of power, right? The lightning bolt. Now, when it's reversed, the storm is already dispersing in some ways, and there may be some cleanup that's required, right? There's time to set down the new roots and seek new ground, new growth. There are things that have already been, I think there's just a lot that's been realized, and it's about really just kind of cleaning away the debris and cleaning away all of the, everything that has been broken down, and the flare has subsided, and it's time to flush away and do the detox and the cleanup so that there can be new tissue, new roots, new growth, right? And I think I get a sense of resistance here in some ways as well, but also kind of like, oh, okay, it really there doesn't seem to be much to necessarily push against, other than maybe the incredible energy that is like being slammed at us, right? And putting that our own headstrong nature of Mars, for instance, into the headwind and taking the risk. But deep down, energetically, it's already over, and we've known that for a while, right? We are just living out the unfoldment of this, but there's a resistance here to moving forward, and I think it's because there's real hesitation about where to go when you don't know where to go. So you may find yourself very undecided, and this is kind of where we're really focused and hesitant to move in a new direction. And so maybe what we have to do is turn around and look at our history to resolve wherever the disconnect is or the issue, and challenge yourself to break free from fear and inertia, right? Like, unexpected opportunities can pop up when you just kind of shift your perspective. Again, Mercury's retrograde. This is going to be important not to lose sight of what it is that really allows your mind to find that equilibrium and balance when things outside of you are all over the place. But know that we're going to come back to this point after some real time to do this, maybe. And in the retrograde, it really does there does seem to be a hesitation, and maybe because the cleanup down at this energetic root here, whatever this is, and again, fear, inertia, these things are coming from more of the physical chakras, and letting go of maybe the trauma in our bodies, the trauma in our own hearts and our souls from past experiences. It's already happened. We can just let it go. And I also feel like this is larger issue of that timeline that had been intended, I think, was maybe destroyed in some or brought in with 9/11. Speaking of where we're at right now, that was, I feel like that was brought in intentionally to take us off of where we actually, the natural organic process. And we are back on that, right? And it doesn't seem like it. And I think that's where people are still we're all getting kind of caught. And in our bodies, we're still kind of holding on to the template energetically of what that was, right? And it's very difficult to even understand this if you don't have all of this, if you're not even looking for it, I guess, or even acknowledging these multiple timelines that had existed. And so it's very close. And I think that there's something about the Virgo, especially Venus and Virgo, there's just something about it that seems like it's going to bring those puzzle pieces into our physical, embodied sense of value and worth and relationship and love and balance and beauty and harmony, right? That Venus represents, and finally kind of realize it all starts from within, and let go of the fear that it's going to be the same. And I think that a lot of the collective consciousness still is that's all they have, is to keep our attention focused on that, even though it's just, very, I wouldn't even say slowly anymore. Surely it is being pulled into the magnetic frequency of like the organic sacred timeline. Not everyone believes that, right? And I guess if we get let off the cliff, and this whole thing was about taking us to that artificial transhumanist timeline to begin with, then I guess, but that's just not what I feel. What I feel is that we are all in a period of real adjustment to what this is going to represent. And I think there is hesitation. I think there is like, well, what is it? Where am I going? I don't understand. I've only known how to do this because that's all I've known, right? And that's not our fault, but we have to like step up our game. We really do, I think. And again, the Reiki healing attunements, it's providing mutual group support in our own healing process that is inevitably and inextricably linked to creating more powerfully coherent, cohesive, energetic structures within ourselves that are balanced, that are beautiful, that are sacred geometric patterns. But I do sense some hesitation. However, at the heart of the matter, where you're just like, you know what, I want to access truth through my own process, my own study, my own, my own diving into the mystery of myself, right? I want to be able to be upgraded and activated by things that are happening through the sun and through the galaxy and through all of this mediation, it feels like. But we may have to, cut that, get down to some brass tacks here, but we may find ourselves in a position where we can very thoughtfully and compassionately just cut the head off some shit and be done with it, right? The Queen of Swords is not hesitant about shit, okay? And I'm not trying to be crass. I just want to let you know, like, that's the emphasis here, is that there is no hesitation. She knows and she feels what needs to happen, and she will take that sword and she will separate the head from the body. And not everybody's going to like this, right? But this is the mother of the air. So there's strong dominance of intellect here, sensitive, perceptive, independent, freedom of mind and soul, wisdom, graceful. And there's a lot of imagination with the water element here. Now, the downside here is that there's a lack of practicality. There's the risk of living in idealism land, and she can be very influenced by outside forces. But at the same time, it does feel to me, with this heart in our heart, right? This Taurus energy and this kind of illumination and knowledge, real sacred knowledge that is at the heart of where we are at energetically right now. I mean, I get the sense that the transition from Venus or Virgo into Libra over the next couple of weeks, right? Throughout September into October, I mean, the head's gonna be separated, right? And it may be very shocking to some, but for others, depending on who this person is, if this is you or you in your own life, you may be just finally cutting out and cutting the head off the beast, right? That seems to be the way in just about every type of mythological story, right? Hero's journey. It's all about cutting the head off, right? In some ways. So, in order to really just be done with it. So, what's interesting here, number one, so we have some guidance surrounding this. So this this, I think that the Reiki attunement circle, what I'm feeling like now is we've had, day 6, and we have really set ourselves up to really invite in this healing process, but have a lot of beautiful heart-centered healing energy just installed already, right? That is strong and vibrant and mutually supportive and but gentle and nurturing, right? The rose quartz truly is kind of at the center of this, right? We don't want to lose our... It's not about vulnerability so much as our sensitivity. And Venus in Virgo right now, I'll have to say, in second degree of Virgo, is really about, like, you have to crucify the ego in order to actually tap into real compassion. And there's a certain amount of suffering that needs to be experienced in that process, much like when the seed has to, like, break open and sacrifice its own shell in order for this new growth to come in. And so whatever it is that represents for us, I think, the Reiki Healing Attunement event is already established a basic framework in order for this process to really unfold. So for those who may be struggling, though, or, need some extra support around this current dynamic here, it's funny, the chameleon is sometimes is like, yeah, just stay in the background and hide and blend right in. But I would say with the chameleon, and then we'll get to the waterfall, is to surrender to the will of spirit, right? You're allowing events to unfold without intervention, right? And especially because there's this sense of there has already been this event that has taken place. Like the storm has already been in progress, and it has already, made landfall and made, destruction in many ways. And so you become a witness or an observer rather than a direct participant. So simply by your presence, you're participating by being in your own presence and having a field, a magnetic field, right? Your field from your heart. And you flow with the situation because whatever needs to occur is already fully in motion in many ways. And that can be really scary if you don't like the outcome of that. And that's really a true test of one's ability to really just be with what is in a way that is fully present and conscious, but not trying to change anything or use the ego to direct the course of things. So the waterfall, though, also in its reversal, does signify a sense of feeling significant loss of power here. You may be emotionally reactive. You may be following someone else's agenda in spite of your own intuition. You may have completely given up. You may fall into depression, right? Because again, it seems like the damage is already done and now it's the cleanup, right? And Virgo, again, that's very much a Virgo energy about cleaning up after yourself, especially after the combust energy releases and does some damage. So it's important that you can acknowledge for yourself that you can rise up and take your own power back and take time to tap the value of your own spirit. And part of that, again, is not being emotionally reactive, which Mars can easily do right now, especially in a mutable sign like Gemini, because it's not really thinking, it's thinking, but it's not really considering how it impacts anyone else around it. But this is about your inner power, right? Taking your inner power back. And when you do that, then yeah, you can face the headwind energetically for sure. And this is not about apathy. And you may feel like it is with these two things, but it's about flowing with the situation and being either a witness or being in resonance or in alignment with what's happening. Because that's how you survive, right? What does a chameleon blend into the background for? It's a survival mechanism. And so, you may find yourself releasing too much energy or working against yourself if you're trying, just like with Mars in that headwind, if you're trying really, really hard to get out ahead of it, you may just like completely burn yourself out or wear yourself out. Now, when it comes to where our attention is. So this is all energetic, right? Down at the roots here. So, and here's our chameleon as we talked about. So when we look at where our attention is, the walrus, right? This is about being vigilant about signs and omens. Trust the signs and your discernment of them. Here we are about the deep beliefs that we can, and a sense of fulfillment because of those beliefs when we come to them on our own, when we've really established faith and then belief because we've gone through the process of doing the work, which again is a Virgo type of quality. And so it's important to pay attention to your synchronicities, all kinds of synchronicities, right? Here's those details again that are coming up that are allowing us to have hash marks or directions or something to give us an idea of where we want to go. Maybe we do have to go backwards. Maybe we have to retrace our steps, paths unknown. That may be something that has to be done. And Mars is like, whatever you do, we're going to just go forward and do it. And you may find yourself just trying to stay still with a onslaught of energy. So Raphael, though, now this is interesting. Raphael, so we got our 8 and our 8 and our 8. And Archangel Raphael is connected to the fixed star Regulus, which is where Virgo is right now at 0 degrees Virgo, Venus is at 0 degrees Virgo, 1 to 2 degrees Virgo today. So this is connected to Regulus, the heart of the lion, right? It's in our feels and our dynamic, authentic voice, right? The resonance from our heart that is where our healing comes from, our own healing comes from. And, these two colors, the green and the pink, right? Those are two colors that are often connected to the energy of the heart chakra. One for the healing element, especially in the nurturing, pink of the rose quartz, and then the green, right? This orb of green magical power that is, the color of photosynthesis, right? The color of plant life. It is, the resonance of the heart at 600, 6 to 700 hertz, I believe, is connected. It's the same frequency wavelength as green on the wheel. So, and in terms of its wavelength of light. So, both of these things are here. Now, Raphael often comes in the guise of a human, right? I mean, there's no wings. There's nothing that would lead you to believe this individual is somehow, a guide or a much more higher density frequency being. But nonetheless, there's an offering here, right? Coming from the heart that has the nurturing and the blessing, and an offering of this energy of growth and healing. And so the fact that it's reversed, again, just suggests that maybe there is something troubling us and we may not have fully realized it yet. And this is where the hesitation of where we're going is coming from. So consciously work with things like your thoughts and your words to shift difficult feelings. Consciously work with the tools that are going to help your body move towards a state of wellness rather than reinforcing your worry about a situation. Use all of your the mechanisms that you have that have brought you balance before, right? And this again is about Mercury and Libra, because Libra is about applying that work that you've done on yourself in Virgo into relationship and establishing equilibrium, right? And so maybe you do have to go back and reconsider some things that you hadn't considered before about, what's going on and what your journey is. But still at the heart of it is just like, I'm going to get to truth through my process. It's just, boy, there is a lot coming at us that is, simultaneously strengthening us, but really challenging us at the very same time. So when Raphael is reversed, it's just an indication of open your heart. Maybe you need to ask for healing. Again, here is the Reiki healing attunement. There is a sense here of commitment to your process through yourself that is going to maximize the potential of the attunement. And to stay vigilant and to stay aware of the small details, and miracles happen, right? They do. Blessings are abound, but there is this sense of having to really strongly coming through, and as much as we all kind of hate it, is that there's a sense of suffering in whatever way you're suffering, whatever it is that experience that allows the, third eye to be washed squeegeed by the blood of the heart. I know it's pretty graphic, but that's what the crucifixion really kind of stands for. And this is the second degree of Virgo is the acceptance of that experience, as much as the commitment to the blending of our two halves, right? And so I do feel some resistance in general, and I think that there's something to be said for this 888 all in reversal too, that we don't want to get caught up in the false premise that this represents and get trapped in a feedback loop in some ways, by not realizing that this is just an octave and not our way out of something, right? We have to master the entire scale within ourselves, right? Those 7 chakras within our body, plus the ones coming online, right? The Earth Star has been online for a while. The thyroid, boy, that one's coming online as well. And then the ones that connect you to the whole solar system, to the center of the galaxy. Those are getting stronger all the time, at least in my experience. So you just have to be open, right? And it may not come in the way that your ego wants it to come. And I know that's really hard when you're really struggling. I feel that. I'm experiencing that, right? You just want relief in some ways. And maybe it's through the process of going through your process that will lead to more than just relief, but real actual wellness, right? So here's our chart for today, guys. I'm going to check in with the stream real quick, see if anybody has anything to offer. Barb says, I feel that Mars also has the courage to allow the waters to break, feel very emotionally pregnant right now and ready to give birth. Yeah. I feel that too. And Barb also says, I feel that Chameleon is tied to the Libra energy of balance through surrender and adaptation. Great connection to the adaptation, trusting the innate balance justice of the universe. Absolutely. And if you bring in the Hierophant and the High Priest, there is an implicit trust, right? There is the feminine with the torch there lighting up. That's like, hello, I'm here. And you don't even have to question it. It's just that little light going on. Cooperation, collaboration, and teamwork, right? This is how we do it. And real good teamwork means that everybody on the team is committed to being the best they can be in accordance with the group. So, the healing attunement, I can't speak highly enough of it, to be perfectly honest. It's been pretty remarkable so far. It's the first time I've ever done anything like that, and I am considering making it a quarterly offering, leading up to the equinoxes and the solstices, because it can really establish some powerful new templates within us, right? And it's not easy work. I mean, there's nothing easy about it. Maybe simple in that you just take the time to commit to something that you know is changing the form of yourself, your inner form. But that's what's the difference between amateurs and professionals, right? So let's look at today's astrology as well. Let's get into it, shall we? So, like I said, the sun is in Virgo. Today is the birthday. I'll share with you a little bit so that you see how you can use the astrology too, and how this is putting new pieces together. So today is my maternal grandmother's birthday. So in 2015, she passed away in it was very traumatizing in a lot of different ways. And she passed away from ovarian cancer that was undiagnosed. So, I mean, it was truly not her treatment, but all of the, the effect of the cancer itself that was the cause of her death. And, regardless of how, from your treatment or from all of the impact of the cancer itself, it's horrible. And in this case, it was really very dramatic and traumatic. And that year, I lost so many people, and that was a big blow. Seth's dad died that same year and lost two of our dogs. Man, I didn't think I was going to get emotional. I'm so sorry. Well, her birthday is today, and she passed away on June 9th, and today is 9/6. And so, boy, that was, and I've talked about this before in other, maybe other broadcasts or in personal or more smaller group oriented types of situations. I know I've talked about this already. Is that year? I mean, we should go back and look at the astrology, because I know it was probably like Jupiter and Saturn. I think we're in a conjunction. It was wild, and being brought into. I was about to take my GREs to go to grad school for natural medicine research, right? I'd taken all of my prereqs. I was working full-time at a spa and massage therapist. I was working part-time in my own practice and going to school, and I was like, all leading up to it. But at the same time, there were these other really formidable experiences that were actually putting me on my path. 2015. And so when this happened, it was my dog died, and then my grandma died 2 weeks later. And this is when I was taking my last bio final, which brought my GPA from a 4.0 to a 3.8, because I got a B on the final, because I was just like beside myself, as these two matriarchal, maternal, Sedona was my familiar in so many ways. And anybody knew that my dog knew how incredible she was. And she was dying of cancer too. And the things that happened in the process of deciding to have someone come to the home and do euthanasia, like, it blew our minds, the things that happened, the things that we experienced at that level, as being basically a death doula to this dog. And so I did the same thing with my grandmother, but she was 3,000 miles away. And I went into a Reiki space, and I knew she was on her way. Like, I knew what was happening. And right, I felt like she was hanging on for some reason that nobody understood. And I kind of went into that space, and I said, it's okay. Like, you can go now. Like, we're going to be okay. Like, you have suffered enough. And there's no reason to continue to do so. I mean, it's going to be okay. And like 6 minutes later, I get the text from my mom, right, that she was gone. So, I mean, boy, talk about all this eighth house stuff that was happening during that time, which strangely enough is Virgo for me. But so today is my grandmother's birthday, Charlotte. I have my Saturn, my natal Saturn is at the same degree. I never put it together until just today, right? Until just today. I was like, oh, right? And I'm not going to get into the details of my own journey right now in terms of what that represents, but, I know what it is, and it's a piece that I'm like, oh, that's a big one, right? That's a big one that I had not considered before. So, I'm not sure where that was going, other than just all this really strong Virgo. Oh, and the pieces of the puzzle, right? And where Virgo is at today. And this degree of Virgo, it's 14 to 15 that the sun moves into today, is really about, the receiving of some sort of representation, some sort of beautiful thing that's kind of been woven, right? It is the receiving of, it's the full characterization of that root system in all its glory, so that it can, in fact, start growing, so that the fruit can actually start maturing at this point. And anybody that has Saturn in the 7th, that it sets you apart from everyone else. And this degree is deep roots that are that characterize the quality of what is brought to fruition. And man, I'm getting all kinds of downloads right now, so I'll try not to get too distracted and bring it back to myself. But what I'm trying to share with you is this connection not only to how you use your astrology, but Virgo, of like being meticulous, putting the pieces together, just being open to receiving that information or that guidance. Maybe you weren't ready, right? Maybe it has not been something that your personal consciousness was developed, in my case, enough, it was not time until it was to be like, oh, geez. Because I really wasn't studying the astrology as much as like I was. That was well before I started doing astrology every day. That was deep into a much a much different part of my path, energetically. I was still practicing Reiki every day, and I was having these very profound experiences and having, like, actually being a death doula distance-wise, with animals, and also coming online with the energy work process. And being at that point, I was there was a lot coming online based on the astrological stuff. It was just triggering and opening these potentials. And I see it all the time in the charts, all the time, especially with starseeds. And if I go back and look at my chart, then I could point it out, all of the things that were turning on at that point. But, and I think, was it Pluto? Well, Pluto was well into Capricorn at that point. And I think Saturn was in Sagittarius, right? Jupiter in Sag. Oh my gosh. Wow. There's a lot that I hadn't considered till just now, but it's good to be able to, again, leave space for, to be inspired and to allow the flow to come through you. And that's your best case scenario with channeling, right? Is not to step aside and let some other being use your mouthpiece, but to allow those higher density parts of yourself to have access to right now. And so there was a lot around that. And so now it comes around again, just like Sun comes into Virgo every time this year. And there's a sense of patience, right? And so what happened? I did not fulfill my GREs. I was just like, I'm not doing this. It was such a 180 for me at that moment. And I dove deeply into my spiritual journey, into my energy work. I moved towards possibly having a full-time gig at the Hot Springs Retreat. And in fact, actually the next year I was in a completely different field. I was like doing horticulture. And that's where a lot of my other shamanic stuff started to come online, and where my Atlantean timeline started to overlap was through that process. So I know now that going into a research, even at a natural university, would have taken me down a path that I could not have really fulfilled what I'm here to do, right? Because even those natural universities, they had, there were requirements for certain medical interventions, right? The Academy of Sciences around medical, even natural medicine is well infiltrated. And if it wasn't for those experiences that were more powerful than any, academic career I could have had, I would have gone way off track. And one thing about starseed astrology and galactic astrology is if you have a grand square in your chart, you will stay in your lane despite every attempt you try to take yourself out of it. And it's usually very sudden and painful, just like a grand square would be. It is frustrating, and there's no getting out of it. And you just have to, find the vortex that is able to be created when you, face all of those 90-degree turns, right? That becomes a circle, and you can find a power there. So if you have a grand square in your chart and you're a starseed, just know that no matter what you do, it's going to put you back into your lane, and despite what you want to do. And that was hard for me, right? That was a big blow to my ego. It continued to be for until I started Catalyst. So anyway, that was a huge digression, but it came through really strongly. And of course, there's a lot of personal feels around right now, especially with this healing attunement and where in my body it really seems to be manifesting. So, and looking at the history, right? That's what I've been really looking at, is looking at the history now of my grandmother's experiences, where she came from, her siblings, right? And other aspects, and her life, and what led to that conclusion in a lot of ways. So it's pretty murky territory, I'm not going to lie. And the 8th house is where I have Pluto. So that also kind of helps out in some ways, because there's a soul level of oh, we've already been here. here. So now, let's talk about today, actually. Now, the big things that are happening this week is we're having a full moon in Pisces, speaking of Virgo Pisces, and that's going to be on Saturday, the 10th. On the 9th, 99222, which is 996. My gosh, this is quite a week, isn't it? Is when Mercury stations retrograde at 9 degrees of Libra. So that's something to keep in mind as well. So the moon is in Cap right now. It's going to meet Pluto today. It's going to come into Aquarius tomorrow, and then full moon in Pisces. So it's really just kind of looking at what the moon's doing. And I know one of the big things that's going to be happening this week in general is that the sun is going to be in a relationship with the nodes of the moon, right? Taurus and Scorpio, and the sun over in Virgo. So patience, a sense of karmic confrontation is a big part of this as well. A sense of, what has been traditionally utilized in the past in terms of collective energies, resources, what's been valuable in the past, if we're going to talk about Taurus, that's not working anymore, right? And the North Node is where we are headed, right? It is the pull of our soul in order to evolve. And so embracing this direction is really important, I think, in terms of getting to a place of, our evolution, our soul's evolution, moving in that direction, basically, the head of the dragon. It's like, let's go. And 16 degrees Virgo, boy, it is really about confronting our wild primordial roots. It's the Sabian symbol is there are children at a zoo that are face to face with an orangutan in its sanctuary, its habitat, whatever. There's a karmic confrontation, and the idea here of having to acknowledge the material part of ourselves, right? We can't let go of that, right? We can't let go of the, where we've come from. And I'm not suggesting, I don't even want to get into that, about where we come from in terms of evolution and Darwinian evolution and the whole thing. I'm not even going to speak to that. But I will say that Dane Rudhyar, which is where I get and even Mark Edmund Jones, right? I think they both were very, very hip to like more of the right-hand path of the mystery schools, right? Steiner and Blavatsky and Edgar Casey's work as well, and a number of other people that were very public and were also harboring and kind of guarding a lot of these secrets. I feel like that Dane Rudhyar really picks up on that a lot. If not, maybe he was part of it. I'm not entirely sure about that. So his characterization of this is still like, hey, we still have to confront the material part of where we come from. Regardless of where you think we evolved from, we still are material beings, almost animals, right? In a number of ways. And having to confront that is part of our education when we are stepping into a path of discipleship, commitment, healing, right? Wellness, organization, meticulousness about who we are, right? Detail-oriented, mastery, right? The adept. That's what's happening in Virgo. So it's the sun in such a harmonious connection to the nodes is kind of leading us to this moment of identification with this confrontation that is really very much foundationally connected and supportive of where we're going that's new, right? And our power of the South Node in Scorpio is the energy of, hey, we've committed to this conversation, this choice, this relationship, this process before, right? We've mastered this at a soul level before. I mean, you can't take Scorpio out of the equation. You can't take any of these signs out of the equation from their opposition. So we've already been here, right? And we know what it feels like to make a conscious decision, to have a warmth of feeling, to let a smile break out on our face, right? And you can't tell me that animals don't smile, right? You can't, I see it, right? An orangutan has, they're incredible creatures, right? Very much, very very bonded, right? Very playful, and very much make conscious choices about what they do and how they interact with each other and those that they have connections with as well. Maybe not to the extent that we do, but there is a willingness to make this choice. And I think that this is, if we have the the real patience and the resoluteness, and we can really identify with that, and not get pulled into all the implications of like, I'm just a wild animal, so therefore anything goes. I think that this is really, speaking of the sun, right, and the fact that the Venus is now in Virgo and what the sun is doing, I think, this really does support our journey to our soul's evolution right now. And it's scary to be in a place where you're like, whoa, everything that I've relied on as reality is not really holding up as we confirm what's been substantiated. But that's part of growth, right? That's part of the actually, that's Beltane. That's the moment when the seed breaks open and the new life starts to make its way up through the soil. And so we have to, some courage here to do so, that the seed is already broken forward. In fact, I mean, the fruit is already growing. There's no going back now. And so the patience and a sense of really confronting where we've been and where we're going is part of this week's work. And so today, the moon is going to cross over Pluto, right? And talk about access to deep, raw power in terms of the destruction of the materium or the matrix or the old guard, and how it has left a hole within us in a lot of ways, or a vacuum in many ways. Moon crossing over this point is going to make it that much more of like, oh, wow. So you can either be like, whoa, look at this huge hole in the ground that I can fill in and do something with, or grow, right? Put that topsoil in there and get to work. Or maybe it's so intense that it feels like a bottomless pit, or you feel like you can never come out of it. That's absolutely a potential here. But Lilith has moved on to Leo now, right? We're done, I think, primarily done with Lilith in Cancer over the last 6 weeks or so, as we have been dealing with a primal power need in many ways, in terms of our protection, our custodialship, our guardianship, what protects us, loyalty, a sense of real connection and family to each other, and a sense of real guardian and protection. And what is the downside of that when you pull it in too much, right? You don't let anything in. You don't let anything out, right? You can't just keep it all in, right? Because otherwise, that's where you really run into problems. And this is where the Procyon story came about. And of course, Sirius, right, is in the sign of Cancer right now as well. So maybe in thousands of years from now, all of these stories will be different because our relationship to these fixed stars will be in a different place in the zodiac. But that's a conversation for a different time. So the moon, like I said, it's going to finish in Capricorn today, move into Aquarius. And so some of the other highlights for today in particular is the moon's going to be in a trine to Uranus, speaking of an emotional kind of stepping up or accelerated growth, as Uranus retrograde is like all of that kinetic energy inside us is like, the magnetic fields of the sun that are like, oh God, what's happening? And then you go, you explode. And Aquarius is about having the technology and the civilization to hold that type of energy safely and in a way that actually benefits society. And, the moon at 28 degrees of Aquarius is something that we're going to tap into, right? As the moon moves into Aquarius this week. And the natal degree of the United States chart, moon, the lunar natal degree, is 28 degrees Aquarius. And this is, a tree that's been, knocked over and sawed up and placed, stored for the winter, right? And that is definitely what I did yesterday. I have we split a bunch of firewood, and then we're stacking it for the winter. So I kept thinking of that degree over and over again as I was doing that. And there's something about the excuse me, the feeling, the inner landscape, the capacity, the emotional capacity, right? And what does the moon rule? It rules Cancer, right? That is the sun sign of the U.S. There's something here about having the capacity to really hold the intensity, energy for the benefit of everyone, not just for those who have, released it, right? Because without this degree of containment, right? Like, what good is all of that wood that is chopped down if you don't have a place to store it? And how are you going to utilize that energy in a way that makes sense? And we were out in the pouring rain, and I was having a blast because I was just like, dude, I know exactly where this is going. I know exactly why I'm doing this, what it's going to be for, and it's to, use the wood stove all winter instead of paying, $4 a gallon for heating oil, which is just out of the question at this point. And so I'm not saying it's easy, but when you do everything in your life, with a certain amount of sacred significance, it really does, strengthen the ability to, and strengthen the overall field of the human consciousness. The more that we activate that ourselves, it has an impact. So I don't know, that just was something that crossed my mind yesterday. And of course, the moon's moving into Aquarius today, by the end of today, and we'll be in Aquarius tomorrow, meeting Saturn, right? So this might be a little bit of like, but at the same time, a sobering realization perhaps, but also a very strong and authoritative inner experience of like, I can face any adversity that comes my way. This is an internalized experience with Saturn in its retrograde. So, let's see if there's anything else that really stands out this week. I think I covered a lot of it. I'm moving over to the chat here. Such a powerful story about your grandmother and the mystery of receiving guidance. Well, thank you. It felt very Syrian too, like a shamanic portal opening. Yeah, I'm going to actually look back at that chart because I know exactly when that was and see what happened. I mean, that whole year was like that. And then in 2013 was like kind of the drastic reorientation after 2012, where we're like, oh, wait, we're not on that crappy timeline anymore. Sorry, guys. But things kind of shifted very suddenly to get us on board. But then 2015 felt incredibly potent and powerful. So I'm going to look into that. Sarah P says, same thing with my grandma in 2007. I saw 3 meteorites going east to west, same direction I was traveling across the country to see her. And I said, it's okay to go. And about an hour and a half later, my mom called me. Wow. Powerful, Sarah. Thank you for sharing that. That is something else. Yeah, boy. I mean, and that's that thing with the walrus in the reading, right? If we just go back and kind of remind ourselves here, and then we'll move on for the day. I just wanted to make sure we had enough time to really check in, right? Remain visual about the current situation. It's pay attention to the signs, to the omens. Let them dictate your choices. Maybe be willing to stretch your imagination a little bit, or, squeegee that third eye through a number of different, means or methods in order to have a clearer picture, because, discomfort and suffering and pain is, for whatever reason, right? Confusion, all of those things are, can really take us away. Now, Neptune in its retrograde is kind of our, saving grace in some ways, because it's almost willful ignorance at this point, to not see what's going on, or at least not experience, the full range within the collective consciousness and within your own ancestral or karmic experience at a soul level. So there's so much here. There is healing here, and there's blessings and miracles. And it's just a matter of staying open and asking, right? And being open to receive. And I think Venus in Virgo is going to be very, oh boy, It's going to be really, really good. And, Venus and Virgo in the tarot is 9 of coins. And for those of us in the Reiki attunement, healing attunement, we've seen that now a couple times come up. And I see like incredible gain as a result of collaborative work with ourselves and each other. So I do sense that what does not kill us makes us stronger, and it's okay to feel fear. It's okay to have trepidation. It's okay to be like, wow, this feels so much bigger. And that's when you give it over to God, give it over to divine source, give it over to the universe, give it over to something that has already been in place for probably longer than you've been alive, right? And has been set in motion by many, especially starseeds, many incarnations off of this planet and on this planet, that are leading us all here for this moment. But the real Virgo, you're always facing your challenges in the 6th house, big time. So it's okay. Be vigilant and be easy on yourself, right? And nourish your heart and realize that, we all suffer, and maybe it's cycling back around for you. Maybe it's just getting that much more intense because of the solar climate that we are experiencing right now, and the astronomical and the astrological implications of all of these configurations, and, not struggle, right? And like Barb said, find the equilibrium, that Libra equilibrium of balance. You're not doing something, but you're not actively using your own ego to change the course of events as much as using that Mars headstrong energy really to just like make the commitment, right, to whatever you're doing or however you're healing. So thank you so much for all of your participation, guys. I really appreciate it. So thank you for being here. Really, I truly appreciate each and every one of you. I gave you my outro before I was even realized I was doing it. So, you know what? Let me share with you a couple things just to, it's been a hot minute, and just to remind people too, especially because we're coming up on Libra, which is the 7th house, relationship. I'm still offering the Starseed Synastry readings at a discount, $88 for a recorded reading between you and another Starseed in your life. It really helps that they have, they've given consent for this. If you have access to their birthday and time, they probably are, right? They don't have to necessarily listen to it if you are more on board than the other person in terms of what a Starseed is. But still, there's some powerful information that's been coming through. Or you have a child, right? You're a parent and you have a starseed child and they still live in the home and they're still dependent on you. This is a great tool to really understand that child and their starseed potential and what's in their natal chart. So that's, coming up on Libra season, especially Mercury being retrograde in Libra as well. I think that 7th house, this is where the work happens a lot of time. And I do believe, Sarah P., you had mentioned in the Catalyst Classroom how many Chiron in the 7th house people are in your life. Whoo-wee. Just to show, the Chiron Catalyst Classroom information. We're talking about Chiron this month, and this is your superpower, but it's also the trauma you can't really get out of. Just to show you a flyer, we just did all the astrology, and next we're going to do all the starseed stuff related to current transiting Chiron and Alpha Centauri, which is in the Centaurus constellation, which was inspired by Chiron, and according to Greek mythology, it is where Zeus immortalized Chiron, was in the Centaurus constellation. So let's see what else. And also, my friends, we have the full moon coming. So Pisces, if you want to take advantage of the sale rate for your lunar transit forecast, either, a quickie 30-minute reading or the full 60-minute reading, this is a great time to book it. Our full moon in Pisces is on the 10th. Of course, if you're a Virgo, sun, moon, and rising as well, this is still open to you. You can always look at things retroactively too, or get an update about how things have been going since the Virgo new moon. But this is all at catalystenergies.net. starseed.net. That's all in the description box below. Everything you need is in the description box below, my friends. You know the drill. Thank you so much for being here. I truly appreciate each and every one of you. Now I can give you my outro and send you all of my love, my blessings. For those in the Starseed Fellowship, I'm going to be posting the survey to get our Starship Zoom figured out and scheduled for this week, so keep an eye out for that. And I love you guys. Take care of yourselves. Take care of the people around you the best that you can. I'll see you on Friday for the Catalyst Astrology Report. Take care. Bye.